of going all in, get the edge you need to succeed. I'm Dr. Erin McKinley, and today we have another awesome spotlight session with Dr. Gena Wollenberg from Oklahoma State University Dietetic Internship based in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Welcome, Gena.
Hi.
All right. Well, before you get into a little bit of a presentation about your program, tell us a little bit about you, your journey to becoming a dietitian, and how you landed at Oklahoma State.
Okay, I've had maybe 3 seconds to think about this story, so I'm not exactly sure what story you're going to get or where it's going to go, but I'll try not to make it last too long, because obviously the journey can be kind of long to become a dietitian and then, have a job for a few years. So it can be a long journey. But I was a student, like, everybody listening to this, I was a student and I didn't know I wanted to be a dietitian whenever I was an undergraduate student. I didn't know that dietitians existed. So I'm kind of old, and the health care industry wasn't quite what it is now. So dietitians weren't quite as popular, I guess I should say. And social media wasn't quite what it was either. So I actually started out as a freshman in college as a business major, and I took the basic nutrition class like many people do. So I might have a story like many people. And it was hard, right? At our school, it's called 2114, NSDI 2114. And it was hard. It was real hard. And it was stadium seating classes. And I think now, being a professor at that university, I think that room holds 250 to 300 students, I think, in that room. And it was hard. And as the semester went, the students got less, right? So people started dropping it. But as it turned out, I really liked it. And I didn't know you could be a major. I didn't know that could be your major. So my eyes were opened. I went back to my advisor and said, I want to be in that college, right? Not this college. And they didn't really want me to do it. And I didn't have a lot of support. And they really wouldn't let me switch. And I didn't really understand that. So I went over to the nutritional sciences department and I said, hey, I want to be here. And they said, well, what you need to do is you need to get your folder. Back then we had paper charts, right? So we had paper folders. So I went over there and my advisor wouldn't give me my paper folder. And so I said, okay, that's weird. And so I went back the next day to just the receptionist and I said, can I see my folder? And I got my folder. And I held it like a football and I ran all the way across campus and I said, here's my folder. And that's how I became a nutritional sciences student my freshman year. And then the rest is history, right? I always wanted to be a dietetic internship director. And I have some experience after my internship. I worked in a hospital for a few years. I'm also a sports dietitian. So I've worked as a sports dietitian for a few years. And the internship director spot opened up. So I applied. And here I am, and I couldn't be happier.
So have you been at Oklahoma State the whole time?
I bleed orange. Yes.
Well, that's perfect. You're the expert. So tell us all about the program that you run now.
That's right. I know all about the program. I know what it's like to be a student. I know what it's like to live in the town. I know all of those things. So yes, I'm a plethora of information. Yes.
All right. Well, tell us all about the program.
Okay. So I have a PowerPoint here, but obviously I think everybody here is going to be asking questions. So you can chime in and ask me questions at any time. I don't have to stay on track with my PowerPoint, but I am the director of the Dietetic Internship. You can also see that I'm a sports dietitian as well. And I have a fantastic assistant director who helps run the program as well. So we work together to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students. We have a mission, like most schools, but I like to share my mission because we are a little different in that we are a land grant university. So we have an outreach in our mission. We have very much a community outreach. And so we're trying to prepare dietitians for competent practice through education, discovery, and application of knowledge. And that outreach, that extension part, is a big part of our program. We do have faculty on staff who are PhD RDs, and they're doing more or less research. They have 100% extension appointments, meaning that our students can work with those professors to do their thesis or non-thesis capstone projects and things of that nature. So they get a little bit different aspect in an advisor whenever that advisor has 100% 100% extension appointment. So they're not necessarily teaching classes. So that does give a pretty good community specialty in those students that choose that path. But it's just like another option. So I like to really look at our mission whenever I talk about our program, because we are a land grant school. And I do have a picture here. We try to do some different activities as a class of interns before the internship starts. And this is what I call Beef Day, or a beef workshop. And so the Beef Council talks to our students. They have a 2-day workshop where they learn about beef, learn how to talk about beef, they cook beef. And the RD that works for the Beef Council does a lot of that. She leads the program. And then at the end of the day, they tour a farm. So they get to ask the farmer all of the questions that you as RDs might be asked about grain-fed, beef versus grass-fed beef, and how to cook beef. They get to ask the farmer, how do you take care of the animals, things like that. So we do a beef day, we do a dairy day, we can do chickens and lambs and all of that stuff because we have access to that. But this is a beef day, and that's a pretty good group of our students out one day on the farm. We have 2 goals that I really try to stick to, and we want our interns to really be professionals. So yes, we want our interns to pass the exam. Yes, we want all of those things, but we want our interns to go out and be known as professionals and be engaged as professionals. And so we really take our goals to heart, and we're trying to create graduates who the preceptors and their first employers and maybe their second employers, whoever I'm talking to, really come back and say, hey, this is a really professional student. We're really glad we had them as an intern, or we're really glad we hired them. So I do take my goals pretty seriously on helping students become the professionals that they want to be. Here I've got pictures of it up here is canning, a canning workshop. So I told you extension is a big part of our who we are. Is extension. And so this is Dr. Barbara Brown's quote unquote office / kitchen. And our students are canning salsa here. So they go down to her kitchen and they can salsa. So they learn about canning. So it's kind of a workshop, because for the first part, sometimes it's a 2-day workshop. For the first part, they learn about canning and kind of set in a canning PowerPoint presentation where we talk about how you can and the reasons you can and how she educates. So she is a home food preservation specialist. And so obviously she specializes in a whole gamut of things, not just canning, but canning is kind of a lost art. So I think my students need to know something about it, because a lot of times whenever you're working with the community, you're going to be asked lots of questions. How do you wash vegetables? How do you can vegetables? What's the best way to do this? And a lot of our students have kind of lost that over the course of, the last 10 or 20 years. And so that's just a I guess you could say an added tool to my students' toolbox, is they do know about the pH of canning, and they can. So we do it as a workshop together. So you have a whole cohort down there canning. And I say down there because her kitchen's in the basement. So that doesn't make sense to you because you've never been there. So why would I keep saying that? But in her kitchen. And then I'll move right into selection for applicants. And this page is kind of wordy, but I can kind of cut it down here and just kind of tell you what we're looking for. So obviously we're looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university within the past 5 years. We're looking for GPA. So we look at a cumulative GPA and a science GPA, and we're looking at a 3.0 GPA in both the cumulative and the science. So we'll pull out your science classes and we'll look at the science GPA as well. OSU, we have stopped requiring the GRE. If you have taken the GRE, we are definitely a grad school, so you're more than welcome to put the GRE score on there. If you've taken it, to see if it will set you apart, and that's fine too. So if you've taken it, I don't want you to be saddened by the fact that it's not required. So it's definitely an optional thing. For us, we are a combined program. So we're a combined master's degree with the dietetic internship. Our students complete a master's degree before they complete rotations. So you have your master's degree when you are studying for the dietetic, the RD exam. You have your master's degree. You can actually do it 2 different ways. In our internship, you can get a master's of science. So you can get a master's in nutritional sciences. Whenever you apply to our school, it's actually called master's in nutritional sciences research, because that's the option it is in the drop-down menu. Or you can get a master's of public health. So you can either have MS after your name, or you can have MPH after your name. And our students, I can't say like 50% go one way and 50% go the other way. That's not necessarily how it works. It really matters where the student feels more at home, and sometimes where the student finds a research advisor, or where the student really feels like they fit, right? And so we have students that are kind of all over the place each year, so I can't even tell you it's a nice split, 1 year versus another year, because we have students that choose it for all different reasons. And then we're looking for various work experience. Yeah, we're looking for the clinical and food service settings. That is, of course, preferred, as you can imagine. But if you have other work experience, don't hesitate to put it on your application. A lot of times students will tell me, well, I have retail experience. That's nothing to do with dietetics, but it is. And so I always say, you think broadly whenever you think about your experience. Sometimes students will tell me they have experience, I can't even think of it off the top of my head, selling clothes, whatever that might be. And I said, well, that's people skills. So I would write that down, right? Because you're learning those types of skills. So whatever your work experience is, or your volunteer experience, or whatever your experience is, don't hesitate to put it on your application and let us know. This slide, I'm telling you once again, you complete your master's degree before you complete the dietetic internship rotations. There are caveats to that, because during your time doing your degree, I have you doing different activities. You saw beef day, you saw canning, you saw some of those activities. Those are activities that you're doing for different hours, how we have them set up in the internship program. Those are activities that you're doing. And so you are gaining hours, but you don't start your main clinical rotation until your master's degree is finished. Students can do different routes, we call it. So we have a thesis, or what we call a capstone or non-thesis project, and you can choose to do that. Once again, it's not an even split, it's not a 50-50. It's wherever the students feel more comfortable is where we will, whether they decide thesis or non-thesis. And typically, this is taking students 3 to 4 semesters. We have students that are doing it in 2 semesters and a summer semester. I mean, that's a pretty tight, it's a 36-hour degree, so it's pretty tough to get it in a year. We're not set up to get it in a year, because like I said, we are a master's program that has, a dietetic internship. So we're not set up to do it in a year, but students can do it. The non-thesis students sometimes can make that happen if they want to take the hours load to make that happen. And then students finish it kind of, I almost want to say, at their own pace. Sometimes it takes longer, and sometimes it doesn't take as long, depending on how many classes they want to take a semester, and sometimes depending on the research. We have a lot of dietetic students that want to go on and get a PhD, and so they're not in a hurry to get out and get this master's done as quickly as possible, because they want a solid thesis project. Right? They want their thesis project published, and they want something pretty solid. So sometimes that's a 4-semester degree, and that's fine. So our students kind of go at this very individualized, I should say. So the internship right now, I'm going to say, is 1,000 hours. So, during our COVID season, we've moved the internship hours from 1,200 to 1,000. So right now we have students doing 10 weeks of clinical, 8 weeks of food service management, and 7 weeks of community. We really work with the students. The 10 weeks of clinical, you can quote unquote specialize. However, you communicate with me that you would like to specialize, and if we have the spot open. So if you want to do peds, I'm going to try to help you get somewhere where you get some peds experience. If you want to do oncology, obviously you don't start out week 1 working oncology in your clinical, but as you go through, I can make sure you get some oncology experience, and you are set up with the oncology specialist dietitian. So I really try to work with the students and what they want. It's the same way in food service management. Most of our food service management rotations are in a hospital. Anything else that might fall under food service management, but it is not in a hospital, we will have that under community. So if somebody wants to specialize in like assisted living management, I have 1 to 2 of those rotations. But if that's something you want to do your hospital management, but you also want to look at assisted living kind of management, I have different places that I might put you there for like 2 weeks or 1 week of specialty, depending on what all you want to get in. And then community, we have certain rotations that kind of everyone does. So we have everyone do a WIC rotation. We did have everybody do an in-person dialysis rotation, but as I'm sure you've heard in the last however many weeks of these podcasts you've been listening to, the dialysis units aren't taking interns right now, which totally makes sense. So we do more of that virtual, but all of our students do some of those types of rotations. And then what is left is more of a specialty on where you would like to go, kind of an area that you might live in. We are in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So we're in a fairly small college town. We have a hospital. And in that hospital, I let students do their management rotations. It's a great management rotation, and the RD there is very passionate about what she does. But it's a smaller hospital, so I normally don't have our students do clinical rotations there, meaning we are about 45 minutes to 1 hour from the large cities in our state. And so students either move to those cities to do their rotations or they commute. So that's kind of all over the board on what students think about that. If you're from, a place where you're not used to commuting, that can be kind of a scary animal, but it's really not. If you're from a lot of places, in the US are fairly rural, and a 45-minute to 1 hour commute is not that big of a deal. So it just kind of depends on the student and what they want to do, whether they want to move to that area or not. And our students work together really well. They either commute together or live together or something of that nature. So it normally works out by the time you are ready for your rotation. So I like to spotlight our faculty. There is something great about our program, and it is that we are large, right? So we're a very large program. Like I said, we're a master's program, we're a PhD program, right? So we're very large in our faculty. And I don't know right off the top of my head because we've had a few people retire, but we're looking at something like 14 PhD RDs, and that's not all of our professors, right? So we do have PhDs that are not RDs, which are phenomenal on our faculty because they offer us something that some of us don't offer us. So if you come here, you'll be taught macronutrients by biochemists, and it's fantastic. So she's not an RD, but I didn't know she wasn't an RD, right, for the longest time, because she's just one of us. And we also have a bunch of staff. So like I said, we are an land-grant college. So we have staff as well, working with things like the CNAP program and things of that nature. And most of our staff too are RDs as well. So you are surrounded in our program by RDs, and those that aren't RDs are offering another aspect to the career that's great to see. So I like to talk about our faculty because, yes, I'm proud of them all and I love to work with them all, but it is nice if you're an outside student because I'm telling you, hey, this is a master's program. And one of the great things about a master's program is assistantships. So if you're an out-of-state student and you see out-of-state tuition is high, right? It's high. It's a scary thing to look at those numbers. But whenever you come to a program like ours, if you have a professor that you're working under that has grants, then you can come on with an assistantship, meaning you would have an assistantship means that we have two different kinds. We have a full-time and a part-time. With a full-time assistantship, your tuition becomes in-state and it becomes paid. And then you get a stipend. So you get your tuition paid for, and then you get a little bit of money each month too. So essentially you're like a paid worker now. And so you can be a paid worker to do your thesis if that is something that you choose to do. We also have TAs, so we have teaching assistants as well. And that is just in our department. But luckily we're a major university. And so there are assistantships all over campus. And so we have students that maybe they don't want to do a thesis. That's totally fine. We have a great kind of capstone non-thesis program, but maybe they want the assistantship. So we have students that work at the library. We have students that work in the athletic department. The athletic department hires assistants, has assistantships, and they do tutoring. So they have a kind of a tutoring program, and they love our students because they can tutor for that 2114 class I told you that was sometimes kind of difficult. And let's see, the health center on campus, Campus Life. So as you can see, there are many different places that you can kind of pick these up, and it gives a student a great aspect of different places that an RD can work, and it gives you a nice resume builder sometimes if you're not working just in the department. So that's nice. So on our faculty, I've got Dr. Gena Hildebrand, Dr. Jill Joyce, Dr. Mikhail Montgomery, and Dr. Sam Emerson. This is 4, and I told you that like our faculty is pretty big, but I could go on for days. So I just kind of like to tell 4 different people that kind of gives you a nice overview of what's going on. Dr. Gena Hildebrand is more or less what she would call a community researcher. She's also our graduate coordinator. So if you come here, you would be in contact with Dr. Hildebrand, just like you'd be in contact with me about your application process. If you're interested in what she does, I highly influence you to go to cookingforkids.ok.gov and kind of see the program that she has done. So I've tried to put a little blurb on here of what it is. So they're offering low cost and no cost culinary training for school child nutrition professionals. So they literally go into schools all over Oklahoma and they offer workshops. Yeah, sometimes that's just for continuing education, but they have an entire support program after they offer that workshop online. And you can see some of that for Cooking for Kids. So students work with her on this grant. And they normally come out loving it. So if you want to specialize in something like child nutrition or school nutrition, she might be a person that you would contact. And then we've got Dr. Jill Joyce. She's really known for her tactical fitness. But she also does some stuff with assessment and program development for child nutrition as well. And the next slide is about Dr. Joyce as well, because she's pretty outgoing. And she gave me some more information about herself. So I put another slide on here. And so both of those are more or less what we would call community types of research. But Dr. Mikhail Montgomery is what we call bench research. So she's lab research. So I put her goal on here. And sometimes our students that work with Dr. Montgomery, they end up wanting to go for a PhD. Like they might come in thinking they want a master's degree, but they might go for a PhD. Something else fun about Dr. Mikhail Montgomery is she's fast enough at running a marathon that she can make it to the Olympic trials, right? She's never made it to Olympics, so she's not quite that fast. But she is the 30th fastest female in the US right now. So she holds that title. So I'm always real proud of her for that. And then Dr. Sam Emerson, he has, we call it the Lanes Lab. So he has a lab where they actually are looking at metabolic and inflammatory response in meal consumption. So one of my favorite studies that they do is they feed a participant, a human, they feed them like a high-fat meal, and then they're going to take their blood and analyze their blood every 30 minutes to an hour, and they're going to be checking for different inflammatory responses. It's just like one tiny study he does because I think it's fun because they buy those high-fat, you call them pies in the frozen section of Walmart. And sometimes those are in our lab, and I'm like, what are these doing here? And I'm always very interested in sometimes of the food that they're feeding their patients. Sorry, they're not patients, they're participants. So you'll also get that too, where we have to go back from clinical to research. So these are just some of our faculty. And then, of course, I said I'm going to talk a little bit more about Jill Joyce. She does tactical fitness. She has a lot of that in her heart because yes, she is an active duty Army wife, so she has a lot of experience in the area. She doesn't just do Army and the branches of the Army. She does help with fire and police as well, and so that's really it's really great to work with her because we have students from all different backgrounds that are working with her, and we have all different connections. So we're working with the Colorado Police and Fire Department right now. They actually have a culinary chef that works for them, and so she's doing a lot with them right now on revamping their menus. And it's a lot of fun to read what's going on and to hear her and her students talk about it because they're very passionate about nutrition. So it is fun to work with people who want to change and who are interested in nutrition. So she's got a lot going on and a lot of things that I think are kind of fun. And then the student spotlight, I always like to obviously talk about the students, but I've only got 3 students on here. I don't have one on here with me tonight because most of my students are in dead week, as you can imagine. So they are very busy, but they're also busy with research. So like I just said, some of these lab assignments are going on right now. And so they have participants in there right now. Of course, everybody's wearing masks and staying socially distanced, but they still have studies going on. Tori Compton is one of our new students. So she just started this fall. So we have first year students, second year students, because sometimes they stay around, but they're in the cohort there of a first year student, and she is non-thesis. And why I like to talk about her is she just did a fantastic cooking demonstration video for us this semester. It was for Beef Day, and so she showed us how to cook a steak, obviously after being educated on all of these principles. And she did a fantastic demonstration while educating. And so I don't want to show it to you because obviously if I show you something on my computer, it will not come across very well on this Zoom. But you know, I'm really proud of her, and she did a great job. And then I have Christina, and she's actually pictured in the bottom with some of her, it looks like that, just because I know what that poster looks like. That looks like that was her master's pilot study is what that looks like. That poster presentation is on. Christina came to us from Louisiana, and she has been with us now 3 years, maybe making on 4. I'm not 100% sure. She's been with us at least over 2 years. She came to us. She's a fantastic student. She went through the master's program, and she was headed out of here for her PhD. And then I would say maybe 2 or 3 weeks out of that, we kind of hustled her through the internship, and then she decided to stay, right? She decided to stay here for a PhD even after she had got accepted elsewhere. So she's actually currently here with us. She would be here with us tonight, but she's literally doing research and has participants in the lab right now. And so that's where she is. And then Nick is another one of our students. He actually had an undergraduate thesis and a graduate thesis. He has an undergraduate in microbiology is where he did his undergraduate thesis. Then he comes to us for his master's, and he also went for his PhD, but not with us. So he got on a plane as soon as he could this summer to Australia, and that's where he's finishing up his PhD is in Australia. So he finished up with me in rotations this spring of 2020, took that exam as soon as the testing centers opened up for RDs, and he got a spot. He passed that exam and got on a plane as soon as he could and got out of here. So he's doing a great things in Australia right now. That's just 3 of our students. We obviously have many students. There's a lot of things that I didn't necessarily cover, and this highlights page just kind of covers things that I've already covered. So that's not super handy, but there are things I didn't cover, like we're a spring match only. Yes, we are a master's program. You get your master's, and in order to do that, you have 2 applications. So if you're coming to us, you do a DICAS application and you do a graduate school application. That's not necessarily unnormal, because I know other schools do that too. I always say do them together, and it makes it less stressful for you guys. So if DICAS is due February 15th, I would have in my, I would assume DICAS is due February 15th. Dr. McKinley, you might have to help me on that. She's shaking her head yes, so I'm assuming that's right. So do our graduate school application at the same time, because I cannot accept you into the dietetic internship unless you are accepted into the graduate school. So in order to be a dietetic internship here at Oklahoma State, you have to be a grad student because we are a combined program. So it makes your DICAS kind of experience run more smoothly if you apply to grad school at the same time you do DICAS, because if you get in through DICAS, I cannot send you this fantastic welcome letter that says, hey, congratulations, welcome to the program. I have to send you that caveat. Congratulations, you got into the dietetic internship, pending admittance into the graduate school. So it kind of makes your life easier if you just do them at the same time. So that might be something that's a little bit different from our program than other programs. So make sure that you know that. And I'm trying my best to think about all these things that may be on your mind, but I didn't cover. So it might be a good time for me just to go to questions rather than try to think about everything that you might want to know.
All right. Yeah, we can definitely do that because I have thought of some.
Okay.
You were talking, but first we'll tackle the 5 questions that I ask every director that comes on the podcast.
Okay.
And these questions were put together with the help of my students. I reached out to them and we collaborated to put together the best questions to ask every director. And they're really focused on what directors really would like to see in applicants. So the first question is there a particular thing that you just love to see when you're reading a personal statement?
Yeah, somebody who is confident in themselves and wants to be at Oklahoma State University. So that's 2 things.
Okay. Do you want to go in depth at all on any of that?
Well, confident in themselves. So confident that they can write a good personal statement. So, I mean, if you're going to be writing a thesis, it is nice to showcase your writing skills, right? And your personal statement is a great way to showcase your writing skills and how confident you are in your writing skills. And yes, I understand a personal statement is a very polished document, right? It shouldn't be your first draft, right? So your personal statement has really been worked over. And then something that makes you stand out. So you have to kind of think about everybody in the dietetics major. We, and I'm putting myself into that, we all kind of have the same personality. We might have the same things that have brought us to the profession, but what makes you different, right? And so can you put that in your personal statement? What makes you different and why do you want to be with us? Yeah.
All right. Well, my second question is a true or false question. And true or false, an applicant's resume should be 1 page and 1 page only. Either way, why?
It's a tough true or false question, isn't it? There's so much gray area in this question. So I've never seen an applicant's resume that's over 2 pages. So that starts getting into CV land, right? Not resume land. So if that's what your resume is, I wouldn't stress about it. I wouldn't stress to get it down to 1 page if your resume is a little over 1 page, as long as everything on it is completely, applicable and you're not trying to stretch it to 2 pages. I don't call that a problem. And I don't think it's unnormal to see an applicant's resume to be 2 pages. It might be unnormal if we started seeing them in the 3 or 4 pages, but we might have somebody apply to our program that has more experience that isn't maybe an undergrad. And so they might have a longer resume too. So we would be used to seeing them. So I wouldn't say that's something that a student applying to our program should lose sleep over, is trying to get that resume down to 1 page.
All right. So what is one thing an applicant may do either in the application itself or maybe in some interaction that you have with them where maybe some red flags get raised and you start to think maybe this student isn't a good fit for the program? Is there something in particular that you've seen or that you look for or notice to where it might be a deal breaker on ranking them?
For us, I guess I'm going to term it as red flags. So something that might be a red flag is unprofessionalism, or if it appears for some reason that you don't get along well with others, which I guess that kind of goes under unprofessionalism. And that's a pretty broad category. So I left it kind of broad. So your imagination could run wild with what is unprofessional. So obviously we have seen some things that are unprofessional, but unprofessional sometimes is language. Unprofessional sometimes is dress. Unprofessional sometimes is your Facebook profile. Unprofessional sometimes can be what somebody else has said about you. It's a pretty broad category. So that would be a red flag to us. And then for us, another red flag is going to be somebody who has a lot of D's on their transcript. So if we have a lot of D's, F's, W's, things of that nature, it's going to be a red flag. It's not a no, it's a red flag. And most of the time people will address that in their personal statement. So if they've had a semester that didn't look as great, they were going to address that in their personal statement. applications are normally seen as a holistic whenever they come to us. So it's not like if you have a bad grade, like you go in this pile, and if you have a good grade, you go in this pile. That's not how it necessarily works. Really look at the whole applicant. So I'm just kind of telling you, don't make that a red flag, because I'm giving you that loophole there as write about it. Tell us about it. If you're on the phone with me talking about it, tell me about those grades. Tell me what happened. Yeah.
So what is one area of the program that you're actively working on trying to make even better for your interns?
I try to make everything you do while you're with me directly applicable to working as an RD. And anytime that I see my students struggling in some way, shape, or form, or they tell me, sometimes you have to just straight up tell me, I try to either fix it or show you how to fix it. So for example, this year has been weird. So last year, I had some students that I saw kind of struggling with finances, which is totally normal as a student. Money coming in, money going out doesn't always match up whenever you're a student. And I believe that is a problem that kind of can go into your professional life too. And if you can't get your emotions in check about your finances as a student, I believe it hurts your learning ability. And so I bring people in to talk about your finances. So my students will go through 1 hour sessions right before seminar. So we have seminar as a cohort, and right before seminar, we have 1 hour sessions on kind of life sometimes. And I bring in a banker, right? Because there are plenty of people on campus. We have a family and consumer science, and we have family what do they call him? Family financial specialist in our college. So I have all of these people at my fingertips, but I bring in a banker. That is somebody totally outside that can explain interest like you wouldn't believe. And so that really allows my students to really talk about these things that are bothering them. And I believe that makes them a better professional, but it also makes them learn better, because we can talk about like, what should we be saving for and things like that. So they talk about interest. They talk about buying cars, all of those things that we don't necessarily learn about until we do it. And so I would say that's something that I'm actively pursuing, is trying to help make our students more professional, is bringing in something that might not be totally applicable, but it does help them in their overall mindset and health going forward as a professional.
All right. So my last question is a two-parter. And the first part is, what would be the 3 best adjectives or phrases or descriptors to describe the DI program overall?
Okay. I've got competitive. I've got friendly, and I've got family. And now I have to explain those 3, right? But I try to keep it to 3 adjectives. So competitive means that our students come out extremely competitive. Our program is known, not just in our state, but our program is known nationally and internationally. If you look at our website, you'll see Dr. Barbara Stoker definitely makes us known internationally with her work in Ethiopia. But lots of our other professors do too. So our students come out with that, I can't necessarily say background, but maybe that reputation. And our preceptors like our students. Our students are normally very professional. They're normally very mature, and you've got a good reputation going out. And so that's what I mean by competitive. And then friendly and family, I think, for my other 2, right? I should have wrote these down. So we really do have a friendly kind of family atmosphere in general. The students normally make a nice friendly family together. They do what they always call Gradsgiving. This has been the first year that Gradsgiving did not necessarily exist in its true family kind of portion there. But they normally have a Thanksgiving inside of the department, and they have a little potluck. Our students do all kinds of things together, like they tailgate together, they do outside activities together. So our students are very friendly, and they really accept people that come in. Let's see, we have done an open house. I can't remember if we've done an open house recently, and we had students involved there. And some of the things the students said we had a lot of out-of-state students too that were in this conversation, and that is what they said. They said, coming here was no problem because we fit in automatically, and there's so many activities that we can fit in, and we found our lifelong friends here. I think those are their exact quotes from open house this year. And then about our kind of friendly family atmosphere, our entire faculty and staff are highly competitive, to go back to my number one. They're all competitive, and they all know something about being an RD, even if they're not an RD. So they're all competitive in their profession, and then they're all highly supportive, very supportive individuals.
All right. Well, the second half of my question is very similar. It would be 3 adjectives or descriptors to describe your ideal applicant.
Passionate, professional, and personable. I kept that one to 3. No explanation needed.
That's perfect. No, that's perfectly fine. It makes sense.
I get better at these questions as we go.
All right. Well, I wanted to open the floor to questions for our guests that are with us. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask.
How competitive is the assistantship?
So that's a good question. So the assistantship, and I don't have the numbers on me, but most of our students, I would say right now, I think that new class, I think there are 21 students in this new class. And out of the 21 students, I think 2 don't have assistantships. So that's not bad. And you have to remember, this is their first semester. And so sometimes funding doesn't come in, a professor doesn't know about funding till the next time. And so just because they don't have funding one semester doesn't mean they won't have funding the next semester. And those 2 students may or may not have, I don't know, I didn't talk to them personally about this before I'm talking about it, but they might not have reached out either. So like I said, we have assistantships all over campus. So really, if you want an assistantship, you getting an assistantship is pretty high. But yes, sometimes you have to reach out and you have to email people you don't know. Yeah, you have to pick up the phone and you have to call people you don't know. If you're coming to OSU, and I know of assistantships, so like every April, the lady that works in the athletic department that is kind of head of their interviewing process, she sends me an email that says, hey, I need 5 full-time and 2 part-time assistantships. Can you send this information out to your students? So that's in April. So if you participated in DICAS February 15th, what April-ish is the match. And so she normally hits it about the beginning of April, end of March is when I get that email. And so like I send that email out to you. So like that's one contact that's outside the department. So I mean, I'm trying to help you if you're an out-of-state student. And but yeah, it's as competitive as you want it to be. Did you say, do I have any interns that want to be a NICU dietitian?
Mm-hmm. Like work in the NICU or have opportunities for them to see if that's something that they might want to be able to do? Yes.
So if I have a student, so obviously you don't start out working in the NICU, right? Like that's not like, I don't put you in a clinical rotation and like, boom, you're in the NICU. You kind of work up to that. So how I have it set up, I have one student this semester that will be starting rotations next semester, and she's very interested in the NICU, but I've known this all along, right? I've known that she's interested in children. And so we've kind of set up her rotations to really, community rotations kind of centered around children. She did her thesis with Dr. Hildebrand, which obviously gives her a child nutrition specialty. But what we've done is we put her in children's hospital. So we put her in children's rehab is where I put her. And then I've given her another clinical experience as well. So she gets the adult kind of like just general med surge and all of that as well. But she's also going to get a full rotation with children's rehab. And so she's going to come out more than just NICU, I think. I think she's going to come out with more of a inpatient experience as well, and not just the NICU experience. So try to help the students however we can.
All right. Well, I just had a few more questions that I thought of as you were talking with us this evening. So you mentioned 21 in this new class. Is that about the number of students that you take each year?
I try to take 18 is my max. I can take up to 24. I try to take 18. Some years it's a little bit lower, and some years it's a little bit higher, depending on the applications that we get in. Sometimes, depending on the faculty. If I have a class of 24 that all want to do thesis, that's going to be, as you guys all know, that can be kind of tough on my faculty. And so I try to keep them somewhere in the middle of 18 and 21 at the max. Yeah.
Do you offer your undergrads pre-select options?
They do. We do have a pre-select option. Some years I have more in pre-select, and some years I have less that do pre-select. It kind of just matters where the students are from. So not everybody getting an undergraduate at OSU is from Oklahoma. And so sometimes they want to go back home for their master's. And so some years this will be a little bit less. I can have anywhere from 3 to 9 that might be pre-select.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you mentioned having to have acceptance to the grad school before you can really accept the spot. Is it in the best interest of applicants to maybe be, say, for this round coming up, to apply to the graduate school now and then maybe find out that they've already gotten in before they even bother with ranking OSU on their list?
Yeah, that's one strategy. Yes, you can do that. So, applications for grad school, are rolling. And so, yeah, that is one strategy. And you could reach out to Dr. Dina Hildebrand now, and you could even alert her, hey, this is my interest. I'm interested in OSU, and I'm interested in the dietetic internship. I'm going to go ahead and apply for grad school right now. This is just a heads up so you can keep your eyes open, because sometimes, your application goes into the system, and like if something isn't finished, it may never pop over. Like maybe you didn't click a box or something, and it may never pop over that she can even see your application. So if you send her an email and alert her that you're going to apply, she can go into the system and see if your application is still pending or if it has been fully uploaded. And so it's kind of helpful, I think, to email her, just because it kind of gives her a heads up, but it gives you a point of contact to know, like, if your application is being processed and in review.
So for the students that have GA positions, does that only cover the time that they're a full-time student working on graduate school, or does that end when they start rotations? Is it manageable while they're doing rotations if they owe a certain number of hours to a professor and then they have so many hours in their rotation? How does that work?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure that it's black and white when I answer that. I think there's going to be some gray in that, but I'll try my best. So the beauty of this is I try to let me see if I can make it easier. Okay. So the degree is 36 hours if you do the MS. The MPH is 42. And that assistantship or waiver, however you want to look at it, pays for those hours and 10%. Right. So however you manage your hours, if my internship, the practicum hours are in that 36 if you're doing the MS right now in nutritional sciences, but in the MPH, it's 42 hours plus the practicum hours. So if you can get that 10% in there, then it would pick it up. So to answer your question, should you be a GA or a TA when in rotations? No. But we're walking our students through kind of how that works and the money and how that, their best interest. And so I don't think we have a lot of students in the dark about like when to plan your classes. You do your plan of study that first semester. And so that's before you ever start rotation. So that first semester, you are sitting down with a faculty member talking about your plan of study and like what would be in your best interest. And you have an opportunity to ask questions about that. So that's a really good question, Dr. McKinley. And it's not like this yes or no question, but we really work with students. Sometimes students might be hanging an hour or two. And so if you're hanging an hour or two in the rotations, then we will move that hour into a semester where it could be picked up on your assistantship. So we try to help the students as much as possible.
So to close us out this evening, Gena, give us one last take-home message to potential applicants.
Okay. The take-home message. So it's unfortunate right now, right, that I'm the dietetic internship director, because I can also give you a student perspective, right? So if you can act like I'm not the dietetic internship director for like 2 seconds, that would be great. So the take-home message is, I obviously can't think of anywhere else to be because I have been here, right, for a few degrees. And I think it's a great place to be. How well a student is taken care of is unmatchable. So our faculty and staff take care of our students in a tremendous way. And so I think that is a real big take-home message from our program. Yeah.
All right, well, perfect. And for those at home who may be interested in the program at Oklahoma State University, I provided a link to their program in the description below this video. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode with another awesome dietetic internship program. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Gena.
Thank you.